The morning started with soft light spilling through the windows of the small room. She sat quietly trying to calm her racing heart. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and perfume from the bridesmaids who moved about, chatting softly and laughing at times, but with an undercurrent of nervous energy that she felt deep in her chest. She looked at the dress laid out on the bed, delicate and flowing, a dress she had imagined wearing perfectly for months. It was supposed to be a day of happiness, of celebration, of beginning a new life. But the feeling in her stomach told her something was wrong. She could feel it, but did not want to believe it. There had been tension over the past few days, small hints of discomfort in conversations and in looks, things that could have been ignored. But now on the day itself, the tension was impossible to miss. Her mother was fussing with the veil, adjusting it just so, and giving her instructions in a voice that tried to be firm and kind at the same time. She could see the strain in her mother's eyes, the worry lines etched deeper than usual. Friends were coming and going, offering words of encouragement, smiles that felt forced, and quiet reassurance that it was all going to be fine. She wanted to believe them, but as she glanced toward the window, she could see clouds forming on the horizon, mirroring the unease that had begun to settle in her mind. She took a deep breath and tried to focus on the small moments she could control, the brushing of her hair, the smoothness of the dress, the tiny details she had spent weeks perfecting. Yet there was a sense of inevitability that she could not shake, a feeling that something beyond her control was about to unfold. Guests were arriving, and she could hear the low murmur of voices mingling with the soft sound of footsteps on the wooden floors outside. Every sound seemed amplified in her ears, every laugh a little too sharp, every whisper a little too pointed. She tried to close her eyes and steady her breathing, imagining herself walking down the aisle with a smile on her face, imagining the happiness that had once seemed so certain. But as she opened her eyes, the sight of the groom in the distance, speaking in a low voice to his friends with an expression she did not understand, made her stomach twist. There was a hesitation in his movements, a stiffness in his posture that made her chest tighten. It was as if the foundation of the day was cracking under a pressure she could not yet name. As the ceremony began, she walked slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The guests looked on with expectation, faces full of smiles, but their eyes carried curiosity and a hint of anticipation for something to happen. The music played softly, the gentle strings adding to the sense of ceremony and importance, but in her mind it sounded hollow, distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. She could feel the eyes of family and friends upon her, waiting for the moment when everything would be perfect. But perfection was slipping through her fingers, and with every step toward the altar, she felt more and more out of place. The groom stood waiting, and when she reached the front, he looked at her briefly, then away, and she felt a pang of confusion and hurt. The words they had promised each other, the vows that were meant to be spoken with sincerity and love, now felt fragile and uncertain. He fumbled slightly with his own nerves, his hands shaking as he held onto the small book that contained the ceremony notes. The officiant spoke, the familiar words of promise and commitment floating through the air. But the energy between them was off, something unspoken hanging in the space where love should have been. She wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to anchor the moment with warmth, but he seemed distant, locked in his own world of thoughts that she could not reach. Suddenly, a whisper turned into a murmur, and the murmur grew into a low rumble of voices in the crowd. Arguments that had been simmering beneath the surface now surfaced in ways she could not control. A disagreement between two family members about seating arrangements, a heated exchange over something trivial that now seemed monumental. The words cut through the music and the solemnity of the moment, echoing in the small space of her mind and amplifying the sense of disaster. She could feel her cheeks grow hot, and her hands trembled as she gripped the bouquet. The flowers now a lifeline she did not want to let go. The officiant tried to continue, attempting to redirect attention to the vows and the promises of love. But the groom looked unsure, his confidence wavering, and she could see it in his eyes, the fear and doubt that had been hidden before now, spilling out. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it, and her heart sank. The guests exchanged glances, some whispering to each other, some frowning, all feeling the shift in the atmosphere. She wanted to tell him it was okay, to remind him of their love, but the words would not come. And the silence between them stretched longer with every heartbeat. Tears pricked her eyes as the reality sank in. Her dream wedding, the perfect day she had envisioned for years, was collapsing around her. She tried to steady her voice, to smile through the disappointment, but the effort felt futile. Guests shifted in their seats, some leaning forward in concern, others looking away in embarrassment, all contributing to the feeling that she was the center of a storm she could not control. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, a small gesture of support, but even that touch could not ground her as the world she had imagined crumbled. A sudden argument erupted from the groom's side of the family. He stepped back, visibly shaken. The officiant paused, unsure how to proceed, and she felt the last thread of hope for a smooth ceremony snap. In that moment, she realized that she had to step away, to remove herself from the chaos before it consumed her completely. She whispered an excuse and moved down the aisle, trying to ignore the eyes following her, trying to calm the storm inside her. Outside, the air was fresher, cooler, and the sky stretched wide above her in a way that felt almost infinite. She walked slowly, her dress brushing against the ground, each step a little lighter than the last. But the weight of disappointment and confusion still pressed heavily on her chest. She found a quiet corner away from the guests and the noise, a small place where she could breathe and think. The reality of what had happened settled in slowly. The heartbreak, a deep ache in her chest. The confusion, a whirlwind of questions she could not answer. She sat down on a low bench, folding her hands in her lap, and let the tears fall freely. The sounds of the wedding faded behind her, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hum of life going on outside. She thought about what had brought her here, the hopes and dreams she had carried, and the unexpected collapse of everything she had imagined. And yet, in the midst of sorrow and uncertainty, there was a tiny spark of determination, a quiet voice telling her that this was not the end. She did not know what the next step would be, or who would help her find the path forward. But she knew that she could not stay in that moment forever. She remained there for some time, letting herself feel the pain, the embarrassment, and the disappointment. She allowed herself to remember the anticipation, the excitement, and the hope that had carried her to this day, even if it had all fallen apart. The sky above shifted, and with the movement of clouds and the soft warmth of the sun breaking through, she felt a flicker of something new, a sense that perhaps the story was not over, that life could surprise her in ways she could not yet imagine. She rose slowly, brushed the dress, and took a deep breath, ready to face the unknown. Even as the echoes of a wedding that had gone wrong lingered in her mind, she wandered down a quiet path. The sound of her own footsteps, the only company as the noise of the ruined wedding faded behind her. Her mind was still spinning with what had happened, with the disappointment and confusion that she could not yet name. She felt lost and small, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The air smelled of grass and earth. The gentle sway of trees overhead seemed to offer a quiet reassurance that she was not completely alone. She pressed forward slowly, letting the movement distract her from the whirlwind of thoughts that kept returning to the day she had imagined and the day she was now facing. As she turned a bend in the path, she saw a figure in the distance, sitting on a wooden fence by a field. The man was tall, with broad shoulders, and a calm presence that seemed to belong to the open space around him. He was dressed in simple clothes, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his face. There was something grounding about him, something that drew her closer, even as she hesitated. She considered turning back, returning to the chaos she had fled. But something in her chest nudged her forward. A quiet curiosity she could not ignore, the man noticed her approach and tipped his hat slightly, a small gesture that carried a surprising warmth. He did not speak immediately, giving her space to catch her breath and to gather herself. She felt a flicker of relief, someone who did not rush, who did not demand explanation or performance. She stopped a few steps away, uncertain, and he nodded gently, inviting her to sit if she wished. She hesitated, then eased herself down on a nearby rock, feeling the firmness of the ground beneath her and the subtle comfort of someone near who seemed genuinely present. For a long time, they did not speak. sharing a quiet companionship that felt unusual and rare. She watched the way the light fell across the fields, the gentle movement of grass in the breeze, and she felt some of the tension leave her body. After a while, the man spoke, his voice low and calm, not intrusive, but carrying a natural kindness. He asked how she was, not in the way people often asked out of obligation, but in a way that suggested he truly wanted to understand. She hesitated, unsure if she could explain what had happened, unsure if words could carry the weight of disappointment and heartbreak. She took a deep breath and began to speak, slowly at first. Then with more ease, as the words found their way out of her heart, she told him about the morning, the tension she had felt, the way the day had unraveled in ways she could not control. She spoke of the arguments, the hesitation, and the sense of loss that settled over her like a heavy blanket. She did not hold back, allowing the sadness and frustration to spill into the quiet space between them. The man listened without interruption, without judgment, his eyes attentive and steady. He nodded at times, a small encouragement that made her feel heard, and that in itself offered a surprising comfort after she finished. She fell silent, her voice trembling with the remnants of emotion. The man waited, giving her time to breathe, to recover, to simply be. Then he spoke again, offering words of reassurance that were simple and honest. He told her that sometimes life does not unfold the way we imagine, that sometimes plans collapse, and yet that does not mean the end of everything. His words were gentle, not filled with cliches, but carrying a sense of truth that resonated with her. She felt a small spark of hope, a tiny light flickering in the darkness that had seemed endless. They began to talk more. Slowly at first, sharing small stories of their lives, of challenges faced and lessons learned. She discovered that he had a quiet strength, a calm confidence that did not demand attention but naturally drew it. He spoke of simple joys, of the work he loved, of the land he cared for, and of the people who had shaped him. She found herself listening intently, absorbing his words, and feeling her own heart lighten in ways she had not expected. There was a sense of honesty in his presence, a grounding quality that made the chaos of the wedding feel distant and unimportant as the conversation continued. She began to notice the little details, the kindness in his eyes, the way he smiled at the small moments, the way he seemed to see the world clearly without pretension. She shared parts of herself, the hopes she had carried, the fear of disappointment, and the longing for a love that felt real. The man listened, responding thoughtfully, offering perspective without pushing, giving her space to think and feel. The connection that formed was quiet but undeniable, a bond that felt both unexpected and natural. Hours passed, though she did not notice the time. The sun shifted in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, and the air grew cooler. Yet she felt no urge to leave, no desire to return to the world of judgment and expectation she had fled. Here, in this quiet place, she felt a sense of freedom, a release from the pressure to perform or to pretend. She laughed softly at small jokes, shared stories that made her blush, and felt a sense of being understood that she had longed for but not found. The man did not rush her, did not offer solutions or quick fixes. He simply stayed present, a steady presence that allowed her to breathe, to process, and to feel. She realized that for the first time that day, she was able to relax, to let go of the fear and tension that had gripped her from the start. The simple act of being listened to, of being seen without judgment, carried a power she had not anticipated. As the evening approached, the light softened, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The man offered to walk her a short distance, not insisting, not demanding, but simply suggesting a way to move forward together. She agreed, feeling a quiet trust that had grown throughout the day. They walked slowly, side by side, in comfortable silence, letting the rhythm of their steps match the gentle sway of the landscape. The conversation continued at times, and at others they simply enjoyed the quiet, the natural world, and the sense of companionship that had blossomed unexpectedly by the time they reached the edge of the path, where the small town began and lights flickered in windows. She felt a mixture of gratitude, surprise, and curiosity. She had not expected to meet anyone, much less someone who could offer understanding and a sense of calm on a day that had felt completely out of control. The man stopped and looked at her, a small, earnest expression in his eyes. He did not ask for anything, did not make promises he could not keep. He simply acknowledged her presence, her feelings, and the courage it had taken to navigate the day. She realized that this encounter, this brief time together, had changed something inside her. The heavy weight of disappointment had been lightened. It's not erased, but softened in a way that allowed her to see beyond the immediate pain. She felt a sense of possibility, a quiet whisper that perhaps life could surprise her. There could be moments of genuine connection, even in the midst of chaos. She thanked him softly, not for saving the day, but for being there, for seeing her, and for offering a space where she could breathe as they parted ways. She felt a strange mixture of emotions, a combination of relief, curiosity, and a budding sense of hope. She knew that the wedding was still a memory of disappointment, a chapter that would take time to process. But she also knew that this unexpected encounter had opened a door. She had no idea what lay ahead, no certainty of what the future would bring, but she felt ready to face it, to take the next steps, and to see where life might lead with someone who had already shown her a small glimpse of care and understanding. Over the next few days, she could not stop thinking about the cowboy. His calm presence, his kind words, and the way he had listened without judgment lingered in her mind. She found herself remembering the way he had tipped his hat, the soft voice that had carried a quiet strength, and the ease with which he seemed to see her clearly. The chaos of the wedding was still fresh, but the memory of that moment brought a sense of comfort she had not expected. It was a strange feeling to think of someone she had known only for a short time, and yet felt drawn to in ways she could not explain. She walked through the town slowly, trying to decide if she should see him again. The thought made her heart beat faster, a mix of excitement and fear. What would she say? Would it be strange to meet again, after just a day? She could not stop the image of him in her mind, the quiet confidence and the gentle attention he had shown. Finally, curiosity and a sense of hope won, and she decided to find him, to see if this connection could exist beyond a chance meeting in a field the cowboy was tending to his land when she arrived, the sun casting warm light over the open fields. He looked up as she approached, a faint smile crossing his face, and she felt an unexpected relief at the sight. He did not rush forward, did not act as though he had been waiting, but simply acknowledged her presence with a nod. She returned the gesture, feeling her nerves settle slightly as she drew closer. They did not speak at first, simply walking side by side across the land, letting the rhythm of their steps and the quiet of the fields carry the conversation forward as they walked. They began to talk again, sharing small stories and observations about the world around them. She noticed the way he watched the sky, the way he paid attention to small details that most people overlooked, and it made her feel more connected to the present moment. She spoke of her feelings about the wedding, the disappointment, and the unexpected freedom that came from stepping away. He listened with the same gentle patience as before, nodding and offering small insights, without pushing or judging. It was a conversation that allowed her to breathe, to reflect, and to feel understood in a way she had rarely experienced. Days turned into weeks, and they continued to meet, each encounter deepening the sense of trust and connection between them. She learned about his life, the work he loved, the people he cared for, and the quiet routines that brought him peace. He learned about her dreams, her hopes, and the moments that had shaped her. There was no rush, no expectation, only a natural unfolding of familiarity and care. She found herself looking forward to each meeting, the anticipation, a soft glow that contrasted with the heaviness of the past events one evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, he spoke in a way that made her pause. He told her that he wanted to be with her, not out of obligation, not out of convenience, but because he had come to care deeply and genuinely. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made her chest tighten. She stopped walking and looked at him, unsure how to respond, her heart racing with a mix of surprise, fear, and a strange joy that she had not anticipated. She could not find the words at first, her mind spinning with questions and doubts. How could this happen so quickly? Was it real? Could she trust her own feelings after the chaos of the past weeks? He watched her patiently, giving her time to process, to find her voice. There was no pressure, only the steady presence that had become a source of comfort and strength. She took a deep breath, feeling the wind brush against her face, and slowly began to speak, sharing her own feelings. The fear and hope that had grown quietly inside as they talked. She realized that her feelings for him were real, that the connection they shared went beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. The sudden proposal of commitment was startling, but it also felt strangely right. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the calm honesty that had drawn her in from the first encounter. Her heart responded to that honesty, to the sense that this was not a fleeting moment, but the beginning of something genuine. They spent the rest of the evening, walking and talking. Exploring the land and the quiet spaces that had become familiar, she laughed softly at his small jokes, shared stories that had made her heart ache, and discovered a sense of ease and comfort she had not felt in a long time. Each step seemed to reinforce the sense of possibility. The idea that life could offer new beginnings, even when the past had been difficult. The connection between them grew quietly, steadily, with a natural rhythm that felt both unexpected and inevitable. In the following days, they faced small challenges together, learning how to navigate differences and misunderstandings with patience and care. She discovered his thoughtfulness, his willingness to listen and understand, and the strength of his character. He discovered her resilience, her capacity for empathy, and the way she approached life with a quiet determination. Each encounter built trust and familiarity, creating a foundation that felt solid and enduring. The world around them faded at times, leaving only the simplicity of their companionship and the quiet joy of shared moments. She began to imagine a future that included him, a life that was not perfect but grounded in understanding, care, and shared experience. The thought was both exhilarating and frightening, a mix of excitement and uncertainty that kept her heart racing. She reflected on the wedding that had fallen apart, the disappointment and heartbreak that had seemed so overwhelming. She realized that those events had led her to this unexpected connection. What had started as a day of chaos had transformed into an opportunity for genuine love, a chance to build something real and meaningful one afternoon. As they sat by a small stream, the water reflecting the sky above, he spoke again, this time with quiet certainty. He told her that he wanted to marry her, that he did not see any reason to wait, and that he would stand by her side no matter what challenges they might face. The words were direct, honest, and without pretense, and they struck a chord deep within her. She felt a rush of emotion, a mix of disbelief and joy, and she realized that her heart was ready to take a leap, to embrace the possibility of a life with someone who had shown her genuine care and understanding. She looked at him, her eyes searching for signs of doubt, hesitation, or insincerity, but found none. There was only honesty, patience, and a quiet confidence that made her feel safe and seen. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle over her, and allowed herself to imagine a life together. The fear that had lingered began to soften, replaced by a sense of courage and hope. She knew that challenges would come, that the world might judge or question their choices. But she also knew that this connection was real, and that sometimes the heart knows the truth before the mind can catch upus. The sun began to set. Casting a warm glow over the landscape, she felt a sense of calm and clarity. The decision that had seemed impossible a few days ago now felt natural, right, and even joyful. She realized that life had a way of surprising her, of offering moments of love and connection when she least expected it. The wedding that had fallen apart was still a memory, a reminder of disappointment and uncertainty, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it had opened the door to something unexpected, something genuine and something worth embracing. She took his hand, a gesture of trust and commitment, and felt a surge of emotion she could not fully describe. It was a mixture of relief, joy, and anticipation for the journey ahead. In that moment, they did not need words or explanations, only the quiet understanding that they were choosing each other, that they were ready to face whatever came next together. The world beyond the fields and the stream faded, leaving only the simplicity and beauty of a connection that had grown from chance, honesty, and genuine care for deciding to embrace the connection. They faced new challenges that neither had expected. Friends and family had questions, doubts, and opinions about a relationship that had moved so quickly. Some offered support, though cautiously, while others could not hide their skepticism. She felt the pressure in every conversation, the weight of judgment pressing on her shoulders, and at times it made her question whether she had made the right choice. The cowboy remained steady, patient, and unshaken by the opinions of others, offering her a quiet strength she could lean on as she navigated these difficult moments. They spent days talking through concerns, addressing doubts, and planning small steps forward. Each conversation brought them closer, teaching them how to communicate openly and honestly. She learned that it was possible to face criticism without letting it define her, that trust and understanding could grow even in the midst of uncertainty. He shared his own experiences with patience and humility, helping her see that challenges were part of any meaningful connection and not reasons to turn away from love. There were moments of tension, small disagreements that tested their patience. But each time, they faced the issues directly. Learning more about each other's needs and boundaries, she realized that the strength of their relationship did not come from perfection, but from the way they handled difficulties together. The cowboy's calm presence provided a grounding force, while her determination and courage gave him a sense of shared purpose. Together, they discovered a balance, a rhythm of trust and care that allowed them to move forward even when the path seemed unclear. One afternoon, as they worked together on the land, repairing fences and tending to chores, they talked about the future in a way that was practical and honest. She spoke of her fears, the uncertainty that still lingered, and the pressure she felt from the outside world. He listened without judgment, acknowledging her feelings and offering reassurance that their bond was not defined by speed or circumstance, but by the sincerity of their connection. The simple act of sharing thoughts and listening deeply became a daily practice, reinforcing the trust that had grown naturally between them. They also began to face external obstacles that tested their commitment. Some members of the family questioned the appropriateness of their relationship, wondering if it had developed too quickly to be real. Friends expressed concern about the sudden engagement, unsure if it was the right choice. She felt torn between defending their bond and wanting to avoid conflict, and at times she worried that the weight of outside opinions might pull them apart. The cowboy, however, remained a steady presence, reminding her that the strength of love was measured not by the approval of others, but by the sincerity and effort invested in the relationship. Through quiet evenings and long walks across the fields, they reinforced their connection, finding solace in the simplicity of each other's company. She began to trust not only him, but also herself, discovering that she had the ability to make choices that felt right for her heart, even if others questioned them. He, in turn, demonstrated patience and understanding, showing her that love was about partnership, mutual respect, and unwavering support. Through challenges, they also encountered moments of doubt that came from within themselves. She questioned whether she could truly commit so quickly after the heartbreak of the failed wedding. He wondered if his words and intentions were enough to sustain the trust and hope she had placed in him. Rather than avoid these feelings, they addressed them openly, creating a space where vulnerability was not seen as weakness, but as a bridge to deeper understanding. These conversations strengthened their connection, revealing the resilience and honesty at the core of their bond. As they navigated these challenges, they found creative ways to celebrate their love and connection despite the external pressures. Small gestures, shared meals, quiet evenings by the fire, and thoughtful conversations became rituals that reinforced their commitment. Each moment was a reminder that the foundation they were building was based on authenticity, patience, and mutual respect, not on the expectations of the world around them. In the midst of these tests, they also discovered a sense of joy and spontaneity. Days spent riding across the fields, tending to the land, and simply enjoying each other's company brought laughter and lightness to their lives. They learned to find balance, to face difficulties with grace, and to cherish the moments of happiness that were entirely their own. The trust they had developed allowed them to navigate challenges with confidence, knowing that their connection was rooted in something enduring and true. One evening, as the sun set over the open fields, She reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The heartbreak of the wedding, the confusion and disappointment, and the unexpected meeting with the cowboy had led to a bond that felt both surprising and inevitable. She realized that the obstacles they faced, both internal and external, had strengthened their relationship, revealing the depth of their care and commitment. The challenges had not diminished their connection. They had made it more real, more resilient, and more meaningful. They spent that evening sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Each story revealed layers of their personalities, their values, and their dreams. She felt a sense of closeness and intimacy that went beyond words. A bond that had been forged in the fire of unexpected circumstances and strengthened through shared experiences. He, too, recognized the depth of their connection. Appreciating the courage and openness that she had brought to their relationship as darkness fell. They sat together in comfortable silence, the stars beginning to appear in the sky above. There was no need for grand gestures or declarations. The quiet understanding between them spoke volumes. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that they had faced challenges and doubts together and had emerged stronger for it. The journey had been difficult, but it had also revealed the true strength of their bond and the sincerity of their intentions in the days that followed. They continued to navigate the complexities of life, balancing the expectations of others with their own desires and priorities. Each day brought new opportunities to learn, grow, and support each other, reinforcing the trust and love that had taken root. They discovered that challenges could be met with patience, understanding, and open communication, and that the strength of their connection was measured not by the absence of obstacles, but by the way they faced them. Together, through every conversation, every shared experience, and every quiet moment of reflection, they built a foundation that was both strong and flexible, capable of withstanding the uncertainties of life. The world outside might question or doubt, but within their bond, there was clarity, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to each other. They learned to embrace the journey, to celebrate the victories, and to navigate the difficulties with grace, knowing that their connection was rooted in something genuine and enduring. By the end of this chapter in their lives, they had grown closer than ever, not in spite of the challenges they faced, but because of them. The journey had tested their patience, resilience, and trust, and in doing so had revealed the depth and sincerity of their love. They stood together, ready to face whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that they had built something real, lasting, and beautiful from the unexpected circumstances that had brought them together. Days that led to their decision to marry were filled with quiet preparation and reflection. They wanted the ceremony to be simple, celebration of their connection, rather than an elaborate event dictated by tradition or expectation. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the heartbreak of the original wedding and the unexpected encounter with the cowboy that had changed everything. Each step they had taken together had built a foundation of trust, understanding, and genuine affection. And now it was time to honor that bond in a way that felt true to both of them. They chose a small clearing on the edge of the land, surrounded by trees and open fields. The light of the sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. There was no rush, no pressure, only the presence of the people who truly mattered and the quiet, steady heartbeat of the land around them. She arranged simple decorations with the help of a few close friends, finding joy in the act of creating a space that reflected their personalities and the story they had shared as the day arrived. She felt a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and calm. The familiar presence of the cowboy by her side offered reassurance, his hand warm and steady in hers. They did not need to speak much, the connection between them saying everything words could not. Guests arrived quietly, a small gathering of supportive friends and family who had come to witness the genuine bond they had built. There were smiles, gentle nods, and a sense of anticipation, but no judgment. No pressure to perform beyond the simple act of being present and celebrating. Love in its purest form, the ceremony began with the soft sounds of nature, birds calling in the distance, and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. They stood facing each other, hearts open, ready to speak the words that had grown from their shared experiences and the trust they had nurtured. The cowboy took her hands in his eyes reflecting sincerity and care, and she felt a deep sense of peace. This was a moment they had chosen together, a promise built on understanding, patience, and the courage to embrace love despite past disappointments. She spoke first, her voice steady despite the flutter of emotion in her chest. She promised to be present, to support, and to trust, acknowledging the journey they had shared and the strength it had given them. She felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by a lightness born of hope and genuine connection. The cowboy listened with attentive eyes, a small smile crossing his face, and then he spoke, his words simple but heartfelt. He promised to care, to respect, and to remain steadfast, honoring the bond they had created together through both challenge and joy. Their vows were not long or elaborate, but they were sincere, carrying the weight of everything they had experienced together. Each word felt true, each promise grounded in reality, and each gesture a reflection of the trust and understanding that had grown between them. Guests watched quietly, feeling the authenticity of the moment, the simplicity and beauty of two people choosing each other freely, without expectation or pretense. There was a sense of calm and joy that permeated the air, a quiet celebration of love in its purest form after the vows. They exchanged rings, simple bands that represented commitment rather than extravagance. She slid the ring onto his finger, feeling a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude, relief, and happiness. He did the same, his touch gentle, his expression calm and sincere. In that small, quiet act, they solidified a promise that had grown organically from shared experiences, trust, and the courage to embrace love unexpectedly. The rest of the day unfolded with quiet joy and connection. They walked together through the fields, shared laughter and conversation with guests, and found moments of solitude where they could reflect on the journey that had brought them here. There were small challenges, moments of nervousness, and adjustments along the way, but none of it overshadowed the sense of happiness and fulfillment that came from knowing they had chosen each other freely and wholeheartedly. They shared meals with friends and family, simple dishes that celebrated the season and the land around them. Conversations flowed easily, laughter filled the air, and there was a sense of unity and support that reinforced the importance of community and connection. She felt a deep appreciation for the people who had stood by her, and for the cowboy who had shown her patience, kindness, and unwavering support. Together, they created a day that reflected their values, their personalities, and the bond that had grown from unexpected circumstances. Eve's evening approached, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and orange. They took a moment to be alone, walking hand in hand along a familiar path. The air was cool and gentle, carrying the scent of the land, the fields, and the flowers. She felt a sense of calm and clarity, knowing that despite the chaos and heartbreak of the past, they had arrived at a place of authenticity, connection, and genuine love. The journey had not been easy, but it had revealed the strength, courage, and resilience within both of them. They sat together on a small bench, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky reflecting the warmth of the day. There was no need for grand gestures, no need for words beyond the quiet understanding that had grown between them. They had chosen each other, faced challenges together, and nurtured a connection that was real and enduring. The journey that began with disappointment and heartbreak had transformed into a story of hope, trust, and the unexpected beauty of love found when life seemed to fall apart as darkness settled over the land. They felt a sense of completion, not as an ending, but as a beginning. The path ahead was unknown, filled with possibilities, challenges, and moments of joy yet to come. They had learned to navigate uncertainty together, to face obstacles with patience and care, and to embrace the moments of connection and understanding that made life meaningful. Together, they felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Confident in the strength of the bond they had created, the celebration continued quietly into the night. With gentle music, laughter, and stories shared under the stars, each moment reinforced the sense of love and partnership. the shared commitment to face life together with honesty, patience, and care. They danced slowly, laughed freely, and felt the deep satisfaction of having built something real and enduring from the unexpected twists of life. In the quiet of the evening, they reflected on the journey, the heartbreak, and the unexpected meeting that had changed everything. The cowboy had offered presence, understanding, and the courage to step forward, and she had embraced the possibility of love despite past disappointments. Together, they had transformed uncertainty into trust, disappointment into hope, and a chance encounter into a lasting partnership as the stars shone above. They sat together, hands intertwined, hearts open, and eyes reflecting the depth of their journey. The story that began with a wedding falling apart had become a story of resilience, courage, and the extraordinary power of connection. In each other, they had found trust, understanding, and love that was simple, genuine, and enduring. The journey ahead was unknown, but they faced it together, ready to write the next chapter of a life built on choice, care, and the quiet strength of a bond forged through challenge and hope. Life after the wedding settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and new. She woke each morning to the sound of birds and the warmth of sunlight spilling through the windows. The cowboy was already outside, tending to the land, his presence steady and grounding. She moved through her days with a mixture of calm and curiosity, discovering that life together was not about grand gestures, but about the quiet, shared moments that built a foundation of trust and connection. They worked side by side on the land, cooked simple meals together, and spent evenings talking about hopes, dreams, and the small details of life that mattered most. At first, the days were simple and full of discovery. She learned the rhythms of his work, the patience required to care for the land, and the satisfaction of small accomplishments that often went unnoticed by others. He learned about her routines, the ways she approached life with thoughtfulness, and the quiet resilience she carried. Each day brought opportunities to understand each other more deeply, to share laughter and stories, and to create a life that felt authentic and fulfilling. They faced small challenges together, learning to communicate openly and navigate differences with patience. There were moments of frustration, times when plans did not go as expected, and occasional disagreements about priorities or approaches. Yet each challenge became an opportunity to grow, to understand each other more fully, and to strengthen the partnership they had chosen. The way they approached problems was not with anger or blame, but with calm discussion, listening and compromise, building a foundation of trust and mutual respect. As the seasons changed, so did their routines and experiences. Spring brought planting and long days working the fields, the air filled with the smell of fresh earth and growth. Summer brought heat and the need for care in every task, yet also moments of laughter, long walks, quiet evenings, watching the sky change color as the sun set. Autumn brought cooler winds and the harvest, a time to reflect on what had been nurtured and accomplished. Winter brought rest, reflection, and evenings by the fire, sharing stories and planning for the future. Each season revealed new aspects of their relationship, teaching them patience, adaptability. In the joy of shared effort, they found joy in small traditions, simple rituals that became meaningful in their everyday lives. Morning coffee on the porch, shared meals, tending to animals or plants, and quiet evenings of conversation created a rhythm that was comforting and grounding. They celebrated small successes and supported each other through disappointments, learning that life together was a mixture of work, play, and care. The connection they had built was not dependent on perfection, but on the sincerity of their actions and the presence they offered each other at times. Outside influences tested them. Friends and family continued to express curiosity, opinions, and occasional skepticism about the speed of their union. She felt the weight of these opinions, but the cowboy's steady support reminded her that their life together was their own, shaped by their choices and shared understanding. They learned to navigate external pressures without letting them undermine their connection, focusing instead on the trust and care that formed the heart of their relationship. They also experienced personal growth as individuals. She discovered new strengths within herself, the ability to trust, to communicate, and to embrace vulnerability without fear. He discovered deeper patience, empathy, and the understanding that love was not about grand gestures, but consistent presence and care. Together, they nurtured each other, creating an environment where both could grow, explore, and thrive while remaining connected and committed over time. They began to dream of long-term plans, discussing goals and possibilities for the future. They considered improvements to the land, projects that could benefit their community, and ways to support each other in personal ambitions. These conversations were grounded in reality and guided by mutual respect, highlighting the balance they had created between individuality and partnership. Each plan reinforced their commitment and allowed them to imagine a future built on shared vision and cooperation. They also faced unexpected challenges. Moments when illness, unexpected weather, or difficulties in their community tested their resilience. Each time they approached the situation together, relying on communication, support, and practical problem-solving. These moments strengthened their bond, proving that their connection was not fragile but resilient, capable of withstanding uncertainty and difficulty. Through these trials, they learned the importance of patience, resourcefulness, and mutual care. The days were filled with laughter, quiet moments of reflection, and the satisfaction of shared accomplishment. They celebrated successes, comforted each other during setbacks, and found joy in the simple pleasures of life, whether planting seeds, repairing fences, cooking meals, or watching the stars. They created a life rich with meaning, grounded in authenticity, and filled with connection. Each experience, whether mundane or extraordinary, reinforced the sense of trust and love that had brought them together. Evenings became a sacred time for reflection and conversation. Sitting by the fire or walking under the open sky, they shared thoughts, hopes, fears, and dreams. These moments of intimacy deepened their understanding of each other, allowing them to navigate challenges with empathy and grace. She realized that love was not only about passion, but about commitment, understanding, and the willingness to face life together, no matter what came their way. He felt a similar sense of fulfillment, appreciating the depth of their connection and the joy of shared growth as time passed. They became more confident in their ability to face life together. The early days of uncertainty and hesitation gave way to a rhythm of trust and understanding. They had learned to celebrate the ordinary as well as the extraordinary, to find joy in shared tasks, to support each other in ways that were both practical and emotional. The lessons of patience, resilience, and mutual care became integral to their daily lives. Guiding their choices and strengthening their bond, they also cultivated connections with their community, offering help, sharing resources, and contributing to local projects. Their partnership became a model of collaboration, trust, and mutual support, inspiring those around them and reinforcing the values they cherished. Through these interactions, they discovered the importance of balance, generosity, and shared purpose, further enriching their lives and deepening their sense of fulfillment throughout all these experiences. They maintained a sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them together. The heartbreak of the failed wedding, the unexpected meeting with the cowboy, and the challenges they had faced together became part of a larger story of growth, resilience, and the power of connection. Each day offered new opportunities to nurture their bond, to support each other, and to find meaning in the life they had chosen even as they faced uncertainties and challenges. They remained committed to each other, understanding that love was an ongoing practice rather than a static state. The strength of their partnership lay in their shared efforts, their patience, and the authenticity with which they approached each moment. They learned that life together was a journey, filled with both trials and joys, and that navigating it with honesty, empathy, and dedication created a foundation capable of enduring anything in quiet moments. She reflected on how far they had come, from heartbreak to hope, from chance encounters to a life built on trust and connection. The cowboy's presence had been a constant source of reassurance, guidance, and care, and she realized that together they had built something extraordinary out of unexpected circumstances. The life they shared was not perfect, but it was real, meaningful, and full of potential. A testament to their resilience, courage, and the depth of their bond. As seasons continued to change, Their connection only grew stronger. They faced the future with confidence, knowing that together they could navigate uncertainty, embrace new experiences, and find joy in the simplest moments. Life after the wedding was not defined by the past disappointment, but by the choices they made, the care they offered each other, and the shared journey they had embarked upon. Their story became one of hope, love, and the enduring power of connection built on patience, trust, and sincerity.